Greetings everybody, 'tis I, 480 volts. And a little while ago, I told everybody that I would be doing a Q&A video. So I asked for some questions, and, well, you gave me some. So now it's time to answer those questions. Now, I also said that those of you who would answer a question would get a little bit of a shout out in this video. So for whatever it's worth from my little channel, you get a shout out because you asked me a question. That being said, the links, everybody who sent me a question, the links to their channels are in the description. So y'all go check them out. Let's get started. Our first question comes from the Mozzerzz family vlog. Here goes. You're obviously talented from a musical perspective. Well, I mean, I don't like to brag, but I am a legend in my own mind. Is this just a passion for you? Would you like to take it further in the future? Also, what about your musical past? Tell all! Sorry, that's actually 3 questions. Yep, that's it. It was one question only. You guys, you went too far. You're out. Get out of here. Strike 3, you're out. I'm just kidding. Martin from the Mozzerzz, thank you for your support as of late. Really appreciate it. Okay, so, music. Is it just a passion for me? Well, it is just a passion, but it's my biggest passion. It's the one thing in the world that I feel the most confident doing. It's the one thing in the world that I enjoy doing most of all. It's the biggest therapy there is for me is both playing music and listening to music. It is the most amazing thing in the world. Yes, it is just a passion. At one point, it was a dream. When I was younger, I wanted to be a professional musician. I wanted to be in a band and do all that, you know, be a rock star, all that. You know, I wanted to live that limelight, and not even so much for fame either. I just wanted to be. I wanted people to know me for my music, and it was a dream that I never knew how to chase. So I never did chase it, and I heard too many people say that you can't make money that way unless you hit it, you know, unless you're. It was like, well, if you wanna make it, you got to be really good, and I have low self-esteem, so I figured I probably wasn't good enough, and I just never knew how to chase that dream. I never wanted to be like a solo artist. I always wanted to be in a band where it was equal effort around the table, where everybody was just as much involved. But I didn't know enough people who shared my passion for music, so I could never make that happen. And as the years went on, I sort of lost that dream. It's, to an extent, it's still there. The dream is still there, and I would like to take it further. Because the next question was, would you like to take it further in the future? I guess a part of me will always want to, but the older I get, the more realistic, the more it looks like that'll never happen. So, and honestly, I can see where that kind of lifestyle would have its problems, and I could see where there would be times where I would not want to do it. So, I suppose it will always be a dream of mine, but I guess for now it will remain a hobby until further notice. Also, what about your... Oh, well, back before I answer the next question. As for wanting to take it further, I still will attempt to make it further, and that's one of the reasons why I put myself out there on YouTube and such. What about your musical past? Well, 480 was very musical from day one. I 2 stories I want to tell, if you guys will allow me. 2 stories I want to tell. One of them I remember, one of them I do not. The first one, this was apparently when I was a baby, and hence why I don't remember it. And this is, I know this story because of what my mom told me, so maybe she's lying to me, but if she's true, and why would I suspect that she's not telling the truth? If she's true, what had happened was, I was a baby, my dad was sitting at the dinner table, and I think he was holding me in his lap or something, and he was kind of banging on the dinner table, and he was keeping a rhythm, he was keeping a steady rhythm, And apparently I started banging along trying to keep in his rhythm, and I was a baby. And he said something along the lines of, okay, this kid's gonna be a musician. So that's kind of funny. And then this second story, I do remember this one, and it's gonna blow your mind when I tell you I remember it, because I'm thinking I was probably a year old. And yes, my memory, believe it or not, goes back that far. I don't remember my whole life as a 1-year-old, but I remember a few incidents here and there. And this story I will remember to the day I die. I was in a setting with a bunch of other kids, again, toddlers, and I'll tell you right now, it was at a nursery at my church when I was a toddler. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I can't tell you any of the names of these other kids. I can barely even remember. I don't even think I can remember what they look like. They certainly look different now. And I could barely even remember the room, but I just remember we were all sitting at a table, and I was banging on the table. What do little toddlers do when they're sitting at a table? They start banging on the table. So I started banging on the table, but here's the thing. I wasn't just indiscriminately banging on the table. I was doing a rhythm. Okay, at church, one of the people I noticed was the drummer. He sits back there and he does the drum beat, So I started banging like a drum beat. This hand was doing the hat, this hand was doing the snare, so I was doing, if that makes sense. And little kids are copycats, so as soon as other kids seen me banging on the table, they started banging on the table too, but they were just going, just slamming their hands up and down on the table. And I started getting frustrated with them because they weren't keeping a rhythm. And of course, I didn't know the word rhythm back then, but I kind of looked at them, and as much as I was able to speak back then, I kind of told them, no, you need to do it like this, because in my mind, you need to do it how the drummer does it. And I just remember them kind of looking at me like, whatever, dude. I bang to the table how I want to bang to the table. You don't tell me how I bang to the table. So that, musical. I was musical from day one. I mean, any tune I heard, I would hum it. Any tune I heard, I would hum it. And I would, I found out years later I have perfect pitch. So that blew my parents away, because they would hear me like in the bathtub humming songs in perfect key, just like, you hear it on the radio or on, I was about to say CDs. Back then we had cassette tapes. I'm showing my age. So yeah, I mean, musical from day one, and I always knew there was an instrument out there for me to play. And there's a question later on in the list of questions about me finding piano, so I'll kind of save that for a little bit later. But yeah, musical from day one. Once I did learn how to start playing piano, once I got into piano, I did a couple things here and there. I played for when I was a teenager, pretty much all through my teen years, I played at my church. So that was really cool. And I haven't been as musically active in my community as I would like to. Now, a few years ago, I had the privilege of playing at a wedding. And it wasn't anything fancy, it was just some friends of mine. They were getting married, they were real young, fresh out of college. Actually, they might have still been in college, and they got married at the college. It was a pretty small ceremony. Just their friends and family were there, and they had a couple songs, and there was a few of us playing. There was a guy on guitar, a guy on a cajon, which is basically it's a little box that you sit on and you drum on it. It actually gets a really cool sound. But it's, if you're a drummer, you can do just about any drum groove on this thing, short of a crashing cymbal. It's pretty cool. And it's literally a box that you sit on. It's awesome. And one girl who sang, but me on piano, and I pretty much carried the whole. We played a song. We didn't play the traditional wedding ceremony song, but we played this one song for the procession, and we pretty much centered it around the piano. So I had to carry pretty much the entire procession, and we had to time it. so that the bride comes out at a specific point in the song when it just like I said, it wasn't the traditional wedding march song you hear, but we had to time it so that the most epic and dynamic part of the song was when the bride comes out. So yeah, I carried the whole song pretty much, and everybody sort of, the other people that were playing, they all sort of followed my lead. And you want to talk about sweat and pressure. Once we were done with that song, I got up, and we all got up and sat down. My legs were shaking, but it was an experience that I would love to repeat. So yeah, I would love to do that. And so yeah, and I did play at my grandfather's funeral, his memorial service. I missed, let's see, both my grandmothers. I missed their memorial services, and I was able to make both my grandfather's memorial services, and my dad's dad, I actually played at his service. So that's, as far as my musical past, that's about all I know to tell you. But yeah, there you go. So thanks Mozzerzz, you guys are awesome. 27-bit TV, what is your goal? Is it to become famous, or are you just looking to entertain people? What are you looking to get out of your YouTube channel? Fame is, the idea of fame is kind of cool, and at the same time it's kind of not cool, because there's a certain part of me that does like my anonymity. But it is really cool, like it's really cool that sites like YouTube and such allow you to reach out and connect with other people across the globe. So that's pretty interesting. As far as what is my goal, fame is kind of, the idea of fame is neat, but realistically, I don't think that's going to happen. Realistically, I don't think I want that to happen. So I guess to entertain is what it really is. The two things my channel is centered around is video games and music, both of which I love so much. And I want to share what I love with video games and music to as many people that will watch. So that's really my goal of my channel. That's what I want to... So it's not so much what I want to get out of my channel, it's what I want y'all to get out of my channel, if that makes any sense. Now, there's a part of me that would like, people be like, hey, that's 480 volt. That'd be kind of cool, but if it don't happen, who cares? But I really just want people to enjoy my music, and I want them to sort of see my view on games that I play and stuff like that. Because realistically, I love watching Let's Plays and I love watching game reviews because I like to hear other people's opinions of such games. So I want to share my opinions thus. So there you go. I just want to share what I love with other people. And I want my audience to grow. I want my sub count to increase, not for fame, but so that more people can... So that I can share that love with more people, if that makes sense. So thanks 27-bit TV for your recent show of support. Next is Ketchup and Pie. What makes you want to start sharing on YouTube? Thanks Ketchup and Pie for your share of support, but I'm going to go ahead to our next question, which is Chloe Ball. What made you want to start YouTube? So they're both basically the same questions. Ketchup and Pie and Chloe Ball basically asked the same questions. So what made me want to start YouTube? Well, if you're talking about what wanted to make me start videos, I'll answer that in a minute. But truthfully speaking, I started a YouTube channel for the sole purpose of commenting on videos and watching other videos that were not suitable for younger eyes. And I know what you guys are thinking. No, nothing like that. But there are a few videos that I guess were deemed a little graphic or violent, and they were flagged as inappropriate for underage users, and you had to sign in to prove that you were over 18 and could watch the videos. And so I was like, well, I guess I'd have to actually make a YouTube channel to prove that I'm over 18. And I started like 10 years ago, so I was over 18. But yeah, so that's really that, and commenting on other videos. That is the reason I started a channel in the first place. And then I saw, other videos, and I watched, and I was like, hey, that looks like fun. I bet I could do that. I could try to get into that, and I'll go a little bit more in depth to that question, because somebody else later on down the line is going to ask a question That's going to... Well, you'll see later on. Ketchup and Pie and Chloe Ball, I'm going to fully answer your question a little bit later on. Somebody else is going to ask a question that kind of pertains to it, so bear with me. Let's go to our next question. Ox Gaming. How long have you been doing YouTube, and how did you get started out on YouTube? Well, actually, I just answered that question like just a minute ago. It's been about 10 years, I think. I have to look at my channel again, but I think it's been about 10 years. I think I started in 2008. And I started by doing vlogs. And because I watched a lot of people doing vlogs, and I was like, hey, why not? They're just rambling in front of the camera like idiots, why not? And I did that for a while, and after a while I was like, you know what, this really isn't me. So and those videos are gone. I deleted them from YouTube. But I started doing vlogs, and then I kind of decided that wasn't for me. Then I started doing music covers, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then eventually I sort of switched it up and got into more video game music and video games in general. And I'm going to, sorry Ox Gaming, I'm going to have to wait a little while to answer your question too. This will all come together, but yeah. But yeah, I started out doing vlogs and eventually just sort of morphed into what I do now. So next is Ella Watkins. When and why did you start learning to play piano? Do you play any other instruments? And what was the first song you learned to play? That 3 questions again. Get out of here. I'm just kidding. Thanks for the question. So this is going to kind of pertain back to the Mozzerzz and my musical past. Okay. When and why did I start learning to play piano? Why? Because it was easy. Basically, we've already established I was musical from day one. Had to learn an instrument. And as far as what any other instruments, when I was a kid, I already mentioned that the drummer thing. So yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a drummer. I don't know if you can see in the background, but that is a picture of me as a toddler. You know what? You guys get to see this. You guys get to see this. That is me as a toddler playing a trap drum set that I got for Christmas, I believe. Yeah. And so I wanted to be a drummer. I was a drummer when I was a little kid, and I don't know what happened. I just sort of drifted up from drums and never really got back into them, which is sad because musically speaking, my mind actually works more like a drummer than anything else. Like, I know I play piano, but rhythm and just maintaining a groove and just the elements of drumming and timing, that all, like, the logic makes perfect sense to me. So really, I'm actually like a drummer who doesn't drum, if that makes sense. So I need to get back into drums, but it would take years of practice, because last time I tried, I could do just about anything with my hands, hat, cymbals, toms, snare, but the kick drum, I could not coordinate my foot to work in timing with everything else. So maybe sometime in the future, but yeah, I did at one point play drums when I was a kid. I tried other instruments too, including guitar. Guitar is something that everybody says is one of the easiest instruments. I don't see it, because I've tried and there's too much for me to wrap my mind around, because you only have, on a standard guitar, 6 notes, and you have to, with your fingers, change them around. It just takes a lot of it's very mathematical, which isn't a problem for me because I'm a very mathematical person, but it just, I don't know, it just takes too much. At least I think it would take too much on the fly planning. And I know after a long time of practice, it becomes natural to you. And I'm sure if I really sat down and tried to, I could probably learn guitar. And that would actually be a cool instrument for me to learn. I would like to learn guitar. As far as piano, no one had to explain to me what the deal was with the piano. I mean, I took one look at it. Once I figured out that every key makes a certain note, okay, there, the mystery was solved. Okay, you play the notes in a certain way to make a song. Boom. I probably started playing, let's see, when I was I want to say I was about 3 or 4. I'm going to say 4. I got this toy piano for Christmas. It was about 3 foot high, maybe. I don't know. It was real small. Probably didn't even have but like 30 keys on it. I don't know. And according to my mom, I just sat down and started playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I don't know what the very first song I ever learned to play was. I really don't know, but we might as well call that one of them, because according to my mom, I just sat down and started playing it. But it's just I took to it like that. And I'll tell you right now, that Christmas, I do not remember any of the other cool things I got for Christmas that year. The piano was the only thing on my mind. All the other stuff, and I know I got other stuff, but they were irrelevant. The piano was there. I think I played that thing all day that Christmas. Man, it was amazing. And I played that till it wore out. And a few years later, we went to visit my grandparents. We would visit my grandparents in Pennsylvania, my dad's parents, every year for Christmas. We would usually go like the day or so after Christmas. They'd have a big family reunion. We'd, hang out, get together, exchange a few gifts here and there. And my grandparents, my dad's parents, we live in Maryland. I don't live in Maryland anymore. I live in Alabama, but we used to live in Maryland. And Pennsylvania was like a couple hours drive for us. And my dad's parents, my dad was the oldest of 7, and so they had a lot of people staying in that house, especially since many of his brothers and sisters, when they got kids of their own and stuff like that, and they all lived pretty close to Grandma and Grandpa. So that whole house, a lot of people stayed in that house. But so anyway, we would go there and we would typically stay overnight in the bedroom we were staying in. This was back when me and my brother and sister, we were young enough we could all stay in the same bedroom. And I discovered under the bed was an old keyboard that I guess my grandmother had started to play. See, I found it and I dragged it out and I started playing on it. It was a Concertmate 9000. If nobody knows what that is, I'm going to see if I can find a picture of it, and I'll drop it right here, right now. But it was cool. It was pretty cheap. 61 keys. Had some sounds on it. Had some dual sounds you can do. Layer, make 2 sounds together at once, as well as some drum tracks. It was very basic, but again, once I saw that, nothing else mattered. And honestly, I think my grandma just bought it to learn to play it, and then just gave up and then shoved it under the bed and completely forgot about it until I dragged it out. And every time we went to visit them, the first thing I would do is go to that room, drag it out of the bed, from under the bed, and just play on it. And finally, she saw there was something there, so she finally asked my parents, "Hey, why doesn't he just, why don't y'all just take it home and he can have it?" And they asked me, and that's what happened. And my mom, I love my mom, but she did try to teach me how to play piano. She tried to work it in as part of school, because I was homeschooled. And as much as I love my mom, she's not musically inclined. So that was kind of a struggle, and she didn't really understand. I had to learn it all myself. That's how I had to learn. For those of you who wonder, I am self-taught and I play by ear. I don't know how to read music. I have to do music for me is something I have to learn myself. If it's a new song, I've got to learn it myself. It's you cannot teach me this kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying I can't learn from anybody. I'm not saying that at all. Nor am I saying that I've learned all there is to learn. No, I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I think people give me more credit as a musician than I deserve. I really don't think I'm that good. But what I will say is that the only way for me to learn is to pretty much do it myself. And that's probably why I'm not as good as I would like to be, because I don't learn from tutorials and stuff like that. I try to do everything myself, and if I can't do it myself, I'm just not going to learn it. Anyway, so I played on that for a while, and it was probably 1996 when we took it home. And I played on that for a while till it wore out. About 2001, my dad took me to a music store and he bought me a synthesizer. It is a Roland RS5, and I have it to this day. It is right there. Y'all know that's what I make most of my music on, in conjunction with GarageBand. Then I had a WK300 Casio. no, 1800. Casio WK1800 that I got for my 15th birthday in 2003. And that one's all but fallen apart. I still have it, but it's fallen apart, and I don't really play it anymore, sadly. But yeah, once I got the Roland, the RS5, it was pretty much, that was it. It was like piano, that was what I was going to be. Piano player, that was what I was going to be. And so I try now to better myself as a piano player, because the whole time I had it, I would just single finger plink on it. And I wasn't real good with chords and fluent playing, so I'm trying to better myself that way. So as far as what was the first song I learned to play, who knows? So I hope that answers your question. I kind of went on a huge long tangent there, but okay. Blockbuster bias. Is there any particular game you can remember playing when you were younger that inspired your love of video games now? Yes, there are a few of them actually, and including Sonic the Hedgehog and Crash Bandicoot. But to properly answer your question, Spyro the Dragon. And I'll tell you why. Because you say that I can remember playing when I was younger. Okay, first off, one of my fondest memories as a child was playing Spyro the Dragon. I think it was a year or two after it was released. I don't remember. I played it. We didn't actually buy it. We rented it from Blockbuster, again showing my age. And it was in the summertime, and I just remember, you know, the summer days, we'd all run around and play outside and all that, and then we'd come inside, cool down, take a shower, play some video games. And I remember we were playing Spyro because we'd rented it and we had a short time to play it, so we were just playing as much as we could. And usually around the summer, my dad would make root beer. He would get these root beer kits. He would order kits to make root beer mixtures, make the syrup and the sugar and all that. And he'd make homemade root beer is better than anything you've ever drank in the store. Fight me. I will fight you on that one. Anyway, so I just remember drinking root beer, playing Spyro. One of the best summers of my life, and I cannot remember what year it was. I have to ask my brother because he remembers very clearly because he has a built-in calendar. But man, such a wonderful experience. Just the game, the music, and just everything about it. That it left such an impact on me. Well, fast forward a few years, I haven't really played video games a lot. I've kind of I've focused on other video games is kind of not happening in my life anymore. But I get nostalgic every now and then, and I start thinking about games, all the games that I used to play when I was a kid, and I start thinking about the music. So then I start looking online for video game music, and I find video game music, and I find games like, Spyro, and Crash Bandicoot, and Sonic the Hedgehog, and this and that, and all the other. And then that takes it a step further. Then I actually want to start thinking about the games in general, and how, I want to play those games again. Well, luckily there's this thing online called YouTube where you can watch people playing video games. And this was mind you, this was back in 2009, and YouTube, wasn't as big as it was now, and the gaming community on YouTube wasn't as big as it was now. So I start looking up, Crash Bandicoot videos. I start looking up Tolma videos. I start looking up Spyro the Dragon videos. Eventually, I click on a Spyro the Dragon video, and everything I had watched up until that point had just been gameplay footage. But I click on this Spyro video, and it turns out to be a Let's Play, and that's something I'd never watched before. And so I'm seeing gameplay footage, but I hear this dude talking over the game, and I was like, oh, that's cool. He's commentating on that. I was like, that's a cool idea. And so I watched the whole Let's Play, and for those of you who are wondering, there's a YouTuber by the name of AntDude. He used to be called AntDude92. He's pretty good. He's pretty successful as a YouTuber as of late. But back in the day, he was known as Sonic Dude 101, and he did a whole Let's Play of Spyro the Dragon. He eventually did Spyro 2, but I watched his Let's Play of Spyro the Dragon 1, and then I checked out his channel, and he had all sorts of other games like Sonic, the first 3 Sonic games, Sonic Unleashed. He had a bunch of Mega Man games, as well as, you know, Kirby and other stuff here and there. And I started watching all this, and I started getting exposed to all these other games that some that I had played before, and many of them that I hadn't. And I began to realize that the whole video game community on its own was so much bigger than what I had thought it would be. So I started getting more into it, and I started getting all these games, and I started playing and enjoying the heck out of all these games, and it opened my mind up to this whole new world that is gaming. More specifically, that is YouTube gaming. And so yeah, but it all started with Spyro the Dragon, so there you go. Exclusive fail. What's your favorite console? And what's your favorite game you've played so far? Okay, well, favorite console is a cross up between the Nintendo Switch, just because of all the retro games that they have on there, and the PlayStation 1, just because of the sheer amount of nostalgia I have for it. So it's one of those two. Though GameCube was pretty awesome too. Well, yeah, it's hard to say. As far as what is the favorite game you played so far, Crash Bandicoot 2. And now, one of these days I'm going to do a top, 10 favorite video games, and Crash Bandicoot 2 will be number 1. Tomba's up there, I think that's number 2, and those two are games that I played when I was a kid, so nostalgia is a huge reason. For less nostalgia, more objective, Final Fantasy VI, because I haven't played that until last, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, is probably when I first played the game. So, that got me into the Final Fantasy series, so, that whole game, I love that game, but for nostalgia purposes, my favorite game is probably always going to be Crash Bandicoot 2. Just love it so much. Next question comes from Hip Hip Renee. What style of games do you prefer? RPG, strategy, fighting, etc. What is your favorite game from your childhood? What's the one game you've never actually beaten? What did you want to be when you grew up? 4 questions. Get out of here. I'm just kidding. Renee, thanks for your recent show of support. Style of games, I would say probably platforming is my top favorite. Y'all know I love Mega Man, so there you go. And I keep mentioning Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, so there you go. But as I already mentioned, Final Fantasy, so I do like RPGs. Thing is, when I first got into gaming, RPG wasn't something I really cared to explore, because to me it just seemed tedious, repetitive, and just, okay, you press a button, you attack, and then you wait for them to attack, and turn-based RPG was all I knew. And I was like, nah. But then I realized RPG games to accommodate for that, because the gameplay can get a little bit repetitive. So to accommodate that, they try to make it up in other areas too. A lot of RPGs, every RPG I've played, typically has really amazing music and tries to have usually a deep cinematic storyline. So for that reason, I really do actually find myself enjoying RPGs. I already mentioned Final Fantasy VI, and Chrono Trigger, that's one of my all-time favorite games, and so is Chrono Cross. So yeah, RPGs, they're definitely up there. Platforming is still probably my top favorite, but I do love RPGs. The other stuff, well, I'll play a couple beat-em-up games here and there, but that's about it. As far as my favorite game from my childhood, again, Crash Bandicoot 2. There you go. The one game I've never been able to beat, I'm not sure if I understand your question, because you say the one game you've never actually beaten. There are many games that I have started to play, but it never actually finished, just because I never really got around to it. Now, if you're talking about difficulty, like I just never could beat it, there is not such a game that I am aware of. There's a few games where I've just said this game sucks and I'm not going to play it anymore. That's Mega Man X6, but I promised to review that game, so eventually I am going to have to play it all the way through. But it wasn't so much that I couldn't, it's just that, man, the game sucks. So I'm going to get around to finishing that game eventually, but as far as like, if you're talking about difficulty, there really isn't a game that was too difficult for me to beat. Now there's hard games out there to be sure, but I've forced myself to beat most of the games that I've taken an interest in. I'm a completionist. So once I start a game, I feel obligated to finish it. Like I said, there are many games out there that I started, but I lost interest in. So there you go. Sorry if I couldn't really answer that question. As far as what did I want to be when I grew up, I wanted to be everything when I grew up. I remember writing, like when I was in preschool, writing a little piece of paper that said I wanted to be when I want to grow up, I want to be a spaceman, a fireman, an astronaut, a pilot, a policeman. I mean, anything. I wanted to be it all. And I was a little kid. Obviously, I've already mentioned the music thing. I got a little older. I wanted to be a music man. So but that never ended up happening. What did I want to be when I grew up? That's a question that I'm still struggling to answer to this day. It's funny, I'm recording this on the very day that I quit my job as working in the electrical trades. Now I'm going to be after this weekend, I'm going to be going back to college, and I'm going to be studying computer programming. Hopefully that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. Seems like I just can't answer that question. I've been trying to answer that question for a long time. Pancake, PlayStation or Xbox? Nintendo! Duh! Why is it always gotta be PlayStation or Xbox? Does Nintendo not get any love? To be honest, if I have to choose between PlayStation and Xbox, it's gonna be PlayStation because of the nostalgia. Again, so it's a simple question. I'm gonna go off on a detour and tell you another story. My history of gaming. A little more on my history of gaming. When I was a kid, I didn't really have... Okay, for those of you, and I don't want to blatantly say for those of you older viewers, but those of you who remember the Ataris, well, we didn't have one, but we did have a Commodore 64. If you didn't have an Atari, a Commodore 64 was sort of like the rival, but it paled in comparison to the Atari. But the Commodore 64 was kind of like a cult classic, only those who loved it really loved it, if that makes any sense. But and if you're wondering what it was like, imagine the original Nintendo, but even more pixelated graphics. Like the graphics were worse than 8-bit Nintendo. And the music was either worse than Nintendo, like in the case of Donkey Kong. It sounded worse than the original arcade Donkey Kong. Or it was just blew Nintendo out of the water, like in the case of games like Short Circuit, Paperboy, or Lazy Jones. Those games had amazing music. But yeah, the Commodore 64 was a thing, and my dad had one of those, and we used to play that a lot. And then in 1998, my mom and dad went to get us, on the day of 1998, New Year's Day, they went to go, and they had planned this to get us an N64. Well, my mom doesn't know a gaming console from a hole in the ground. So she thought she was buying an N64. Turns out she brought home a Sony PlayStation. Totally different ball game. At that time, there was kind of the whole PlayStation's better than N64. No, N64 is better than PlayStation. This and that, and kind of going on. But the word around town was that the N64 was better than the PlayStation. So for that reason, I kind of felt that we'd been cheated out of the deal. But looking back now, no. I've tried to get into some of the old games on the N64. No, the PlayStation 1 has the N64 beat by light years. See, here's the thing about the N64. What made it so amazing is that the graphics are on par with the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation. But it was cartridge, whereas, Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn were CD-ROM consoles, and Nintendo was still doing cartridges. That they were able to achieve all that with cartridges is amazing to me. So, huge props to the N64. And, but honestly, the Sony PlayStation just had so many better games. And so many amazing games. Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Cross, Mega Man X4 and 5. What else? Legend of Dragoon, Grandia. And those are just games that I haven't played until recent years. I haven't even mentioned the childhood games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Tomba and all those. It was just amazing. And the thing is, I feel like a lot of franchises like Mega Man and Final Fantasy that started out on the Nintendo and then moved to the PlayStation 1, I really think they did that because the Sony PlayStation could do CDs and the N64 couldn't. I mean, when Final Fantasy, if you ever wondered why Final Fantasy VII has such bad graphics, it's because it was originally going to be put on the N64. So they started making it according to those limitations. And after a while, they were like, guys, we can't do this on the N64. It's going to take 120 something cartridges. If we do it on the PlayStation, we can do it in 3 discs. So there you go. So as amazing as the N64 is, they kind of shot themselves in the foot by only doing cartridges. So I feel like the PlayStation 1 just had better games. Now, N64 did have Smash Bros. I'll give them that. And they had, they had Star Fox 64 and they had Mario 64. Those are amazing games. But PlayStation 4, yeah, or PlayStation 1, yeah, that's the bomb. So even though you're probably talking about Xbox One versus PlayStation 4, I'm just going to always have a more favoritism towards the PlayStation because that was the first console I grew up with. Coming straight from the Commodore 64 and jumping onto the PlayStation 1, my mind was blown. I played a demo of Crash Bandicoot 1, first 3D platform I'd ever played. I couldn't believe. I was like, I cannot be living in a century where this is possible. My mind was blown. Looking back nowadays, it doesn't look that impressive, but oh man. So yeah, my vote will always be PlayStation just because of the nostalgia. Last question comes from Vontrell Spurlock TV. Fortnite or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds? I think that's what you meant because you just put PUBG. 480 volts doesn't do acronyms, guys. You've got to spell it out for me, otherwise I may not know what you're talking about. And if you're like, well, if you don't know what PUBG stands for, then you must have never played it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've never played that game, and I've never played Fortnite either. So honestly, I have no opinion of either one of those games. I will say this. I heard a buddy of mine say something about Fortnite. He said, Fortnite is every middle schooler's obsession right now. That turned me off because it made it sound way too trendy for my taste. 480 is an anti-conformist. 480 doesn't like to do what everybody considers it. I don't like things that are marketed as being the thing. So, the thing of today. That's one of the reasons. It's not the only reason. It's not the main reason. But it is a reason why I don't like modern music. Because it's marketed as if you're supposed to like it. And nobody tells me what I'm supposed to like, right? So, if you tell me I'm going to love Fortnite because everybody else loves Fortnite, guess what? I'm going to make it a point in my mind to not like Fortnite. I'm very contrary. I like what I like. But honestly, I have no interest in Fortnite, and I have no interest in PUBG, so sorry. Maybe sometime in the future, after the craze has died down, everybody's drifted away from those games, and then I go to play them, and there's nobody online for me to play with, and I'll be like, what the heck is the point of this? So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, those are the questions. I hope that answered everybody's questions. I know I kind of jumped around there, and I'm sorry, guys. But maybe I'll do more stuff like this later on. But thanks for everybody that asked a question. Yet again, the links are in the description. So the links for the channels are in the description. So go check everybody out. Some really good channels here. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out!